A Docker context is a named endpoint that bundles everything needed to talk to a Docker daemon. The host address, TLS certificates, and configuration flags, all stored under one alias you can switch with a single command. Contexts matter because containers live everywhere now. Your laptop running Docker desktop, a remote Linux staging server, a production swarm cluster, AWS ECS, Azure ACI. One named context per target means you flip between daemons without exporting environment variables or remembering IP addresses. Anatomy of a context. Docker_host defines where the daemon lives, a Unix socket, a TCP address, or an SSH endpoint. TLS fields point to the CA certificate, client cert, and client key. Metadata adds a name, a description, and the default orchestrator. Stored as JSON_.docker/context/ and tracked by the active entry in /docker/config.json. The context lifecycle is 8 commands. ls lists what you have, create spins up a new one, use sets the active target, rm deletes it, inspect dumps the full JSON, update changes fields in place, export writes a context to a file, and import brings it back on another machine. Docker context create builds a new named endpoint. You give it a name and the Docker_host, and optionally the TLS material and a description. Think of it as minting a new identity card for a daemon. Docker context use flips the active target instantly. Every subsequent Docker run, Docker PS, and Docker compose up routes to the chosen daemon until you switch again. The asterisk in Docker context ls marks the current one. Docker context inspect reveals the full JSON behind any context, host, TLS paths, metadata, so you can verify what is actually configured before you ship a container to the wrong cluster. Export and import turn contexts into portable artifacts. Export writes a tarball, import loads it on another machine. Perfect for sharing a staging endpoint with a teammate, seeding CI runners, or syncing production credentials across your ops team. Real-world payoff. Multi-cloud development means the same Docker Compose workflow runs locally, on ECS, and on ACI without rewriting a line. CI runners each carry an imported context pointing at their assigned cluster. Staging and production stay isolated. A mistyped context use is the only way to cross the wires, and ls makes it obvious which world you are in. Docker buildx is the modern build subsystem, powered by buildkit, and bundled with current Docker releases. It replaces the legacy Docker build command with parallel stages, smarter caching, and features the old engine never had. A builder is a named buildkit instance you can spin up locally, on a remote node, or in the cloud. buildx lets you keep many builders active at once, each tuned for a different job, decoupling where the CLI runs from where the build actually executes. Multi-platform builds matter, because silicon is fragmented. ARM Macs, AWS Graviton instances, Raspberry Pis, and IoT devices all run different architectures. Shipping AMD 64, only images waste performance and money on every non-x86 chip in your fleet. Multi-arch works through two pieces working together. QEMU emulation, registered via binf_miscellaneous, lets one CPU architecture run binaries for another. The manifest list, called a multi-arch index, points to each per architecture image so the right one is pulled automatically. buildx exposes 4 driver types. The Docker driver reuses the existing daemon. The Docker container driver is portable and rootless friendly. The remote driver connects to a buildkit server over the network. The Kubernetes driver schedules builds as pods in a cluster. Contexts point at daemons. Every Docker context is a named endpoint that tells your CLI where to send commands, a local socket, an SSH host, or a remote engine. Builders, on the other hand, are buildkit instances, and buildkit can live right next to a daemon in a separate container, or on its own dedicated node. Here's the powerful part. You can attach a builder to a remote context, so all your heavy compilation happens on a beefy build server while you stay comfortably on your laptop. The CLI orchestrates, the remote machine sweats. The typical workflow is 2 commands. First, Docker context use prod points your CLI at the remote daemon. Then Docker buildx create. Use, driver remote attaches a builder aimed at that remote buildkit endpoint. And from that moment every Docker build runs on the big machine. 6 flags deserve attention. Driver picks the builder type, Docker, Docker container, remote, Kubernetes, or Unix. Use makes the new builder the active one immediately. Name gives it a label. Platform declares target architectures like Linux/AMD 64 and Linux/ARM 64. Node picks a node inside multi-node setups. And leave running keeps the buildkit container alive between builds for faster reuse. Recap. Context switch where your Docker CLI talks. buildx switches how and where your images are built, including multi-architecture targets. Stack them together and your laptop orchestrates while remote build kits do the heavy lifting. Docker contexts let you manage multiple endpoints from a single CLI, and buildx extends Docker with advanced image building capabilities. In this demo, we'll create a named context, verify buildx availability, list existing builders, create a new builder, and inspect it. We start by clearing the terminal to get a clean workspace. This isn't required, but it makes it easier to read each command's output as we step through the demo. Next, we create a new Docker context named local, and pipe the output through head to keep the result readable. The success message confirms that Docker stored the context configuration, and we can now switch to it with Docker context use. Before using buildx, we verify that the buildx plugin is installed and accessible. This one-liner prints the buildx version if available, or echoes buildx missing, so we can immediately tell whether the tool is ready.